Hey everyone, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and today I'm back with another 4K review. Today we're taking a look at the newest release from Universal Pictures on 4K, and that is Quentin Tarantino's Inglorious Basterds. So this will actually be the first 4K back catalog title of Tarantino's. Obviously we got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but none of his other movies like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Django, Hateful Eight, none of those great classics have been released in 4K until now with Inglorious Basterds. So I was really excited to check this one out and do a full 4K review for you all. So in this review I'll dive into the video quality and whether or not that's worth upgrading over a Blu-ray. I'll talk about the audio, the packaging, and the special features, and ultimately give you a recommendation on whether or not this is worth upgrading in your collection to grab this 4K release. So diving right into the visuals, let's talk some specs real quick. This is an interesting one because it was actually shot on 35mm, has a 35mm negative, but it was finished at 2K and has a 2K digital intermediate. That was pretty common in 2008, 2009 when this came out, because obviously the rendering to 4K would have taken a lot of effort, but they were still wanting to do things digitally. Now I don't know all the decisions that went behind the scenes, but I wasn't surprised to see that this had a 2K digital intermediate given the time it was released. That being said, it does not appear that anything was done to re-render this or retransfer this over to a full 4K digital intermediate. I searched all the Universal Press releases out there. I looked online. There was nothing about Tarantino overseeing this, redoing the transfer. And so as far as I can tell, this is the same 2K digital intermediate that you would have seen in theaters, that you would have seen on the previous Blu-ray release in 1080p, and it's just being upscaled here to 4K. Now this release packs HDR10+, but no Dolby Vision. I thought that was interesting because Dolby Vision has been the clear leader in the HDR kind of format. This is HDR10+ and then HDR10 as a base, which is how I watched it because I don't have an HDR10+ capable player. So I hate to say this because I really was looking forward to this one so much, but I'm really disappointed in this 4K release by Universal, especially given some of the great work they've done on past 4K releases, and given that this is the first catalog Tarantino movie. This was a big deal. It's one of his best movies in my opinion, so I was very excited. But the visuals here, I went head to head. I watched the Blu-ray and then I watched the 4K, and then I did some scene skipping back and forth. And honestly, I think the Blu-ray looks better for a couple of reasons. First off, the HDR I don't think did this any favors. Honestly, sometimes you see this with HDR and sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But in this case, I did not like it, and it made the image way too dark. So a few of the major sequences, there's the scene down in the kind of underground bar in the middle of the movie where Michael Fassbender comes in. There's the scene at the beginning of the movie in the cabin in France, and those were a lot brighter and a little easier to make out details on the Blu-ray. And then on this HDR, they kind of just like, I didn't notice any major color differences. Everything just got darker. And that's where you can kind of go wrong with HDR, is you kind of, you play with the contrast and the brightness too much to try to hit those deep inky black levels, and then you end up making the rest of the picture way too dark. So I didn't like that here, and I didn't think the HDR really added anything. You know, I'm looking for like the red on the Nazi flags or the banners, the explosions at the end, the fire at the end of the movie, looking for the greens of the uniforms and the different colors of the uniforms, the white of all those suit, you know, all that stuff. It just didn't pop any more for me than it did on the Blu-ray. So I wasn't really impressed with the HDR at all. So that was the number one reason why I actually preferred watching the Blu-ray. The second issue I had with this was that the 2K upscale did not really do this any favors. The 4K resolution with a 2K digital intermediate really exposed a lot of the softness and some of the, you know, artistic decisions that Tarantino made and his cinematography team made in the original shooting of the film, which was fine, and it's not as bad looking on Blu-ray because there's less exposed, you have less pixels, less resolution to work with. But when you go to 4K, all of a sudden that softness is in your face, and it's a really soft picture. It's not detailed. It's not really tight 4K, crisp 4K image like we want. And it could have been, I think, if they went back and did a 4K scan, given that this has a 35mm negative. But not doing that really exposed some of the artistic decisions, which could have been fixed with a new transfer, but instead look really, really poor here, to the point where you could have told me that in certain scenes, it looks as bad as DVD quality resolution, and I would have said that the Blu-ray takes the cake there by far. And there's too many of those for me to make a solid recommendation that these 4K visuals are better. There's a few scenes that do stand out, and there's a couple of landscape shots that look better in 4K when you kind of, zoom out and have a larger scale to the picture. But when you get real tight in on people's faces, which a lot of this movie is with how much dialogue it has, it really looks poor. It looks really soft. In the 4K, honestly, in this case, made it worse because of the higher resolution. It just exposed so much more of the issues with the original source and some of the soft shots and things like that, which certainly could have been fixed with a new remaster in 4K. So I have a feeling this was just a straight upscale. I didn't read anything online. Like I said, Tarantino wasn't involved with this as far as I know. Everything points to this being kind of a cheap, what I would call marketing gimmick type disc, where you're just buying the 4K because it's 4K, so it must be better. And in this case, I really didn't think it was. Now, moving on to the audio, you get the exact same audio track here. It's a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. Same as what was on the Blu-ray. I cannot tell any difference. I did not have any materials, press materials, anything from Universal that said it was different. So as far as I know, it is exactly the same. And so I would defer you back to any Blu-ray reviews done of that audio track. You can go read those. There's plenty of them all over the place online. I may have even done one myself back in the day when I was writing Blu-ray reviews. But it's a solid audio track. I mean, it has, highlight moments, especially at the end, and there's a few moments throughout the movie, but the biggest thing was dialogue. Is the dialogue clear? Because it's so dialogue driven, and it is. I had no issues with that. It's a very clear, quality soundtrack, but no upgrade here on 4K. So again, another reason this leads me to think maybe this was kind of a cheap upscale. And then you dive into packaging and special features. So the packaging is different. I actually like this packaging better than the other release. I like the white. I like the artwork. On the inside, you do have the Blu-ray disc with some new artwork, as well as the 4K disc and a digital copy, which should redeem in 4K. So that might be the highlight of this package, is the packaging and the new slipcover, because looking at special features, those are all entirely repurposed as well. There's nothing on this 4K disc that didn't already exist on the Blu-ray. Some of it is ported over so you can watch it on the 4K disc, but it's nothing that really would lead you to buy this. There's no reason. There's no special edition, special features you're missing. Nothing behind the scenes that you would be adding to your collection by buying the 4K. So overall, I know this was kind of a tough review, but I just, I have high hopes when you talk about a movie of this caliber, a director of this caliber, his first catalog title. Universal had a chance to make a real impact here, do a new 4K scan from a 35mm negative, maybe do a new audio track, Atmos, 7.1 even. They didn't do any of it. No new special features. The only thing that's really new here is the packaging. And then the disc, the 4K disc, just isn't that great. And I will mention this because I know there's differing opinions on bit rates and how much that plays into quality of the disc, but I was seeing bit rates on this disc of 35 to 40 megabits per second, whereas you look at top end 4K discs that are 80, 90 megabits per second. So it definitely points to this being just a straight upscale, and it's honestly not much better quality than the Blu-ray, and in many cases it is worse than what you get on 1080p Blu-ray. So I cannot recommend this one, unfortunately. There's no real reason to buy this and to upgrade this disc if you have the Blu-ray. That's still going to be the best version of this movie. Now, I'm holding out hope that maybe somebody like Arrow Video would step in and do a new 4K scan. They have the rights to some Universal movies. Maybe this is just a disc Universal puts out there cheaply, and someone picks it up later and does the right thing and rescans it. And maybe if they get enough negative reviews, they will do that. But for right now, if you've pre-ordered this, I would seriously consider canceling it. I think this ends up being a sub $10 disc at some point because it's not that high quality a release. And if you really just want to see the movie and own it on physical media, right now, I think the 1080p Blu-ray is the superior experience. So that's the one I would go for. There really just aren't any merits to this 4K disc that make me say you need to have this in your collection, and certainly not for $20 at release day. So it is what it is. I'm disappointed, but you know what? Like I said, we hold out hope that maybe somebody will fix this. Maybe Universal will fix it, but just be very cautious if you're buying this one. Normally I would leave a link down in the description to this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link to the Blu-ray instead, because you should own this movie, and right now the Blu-ray is still the best way to own it, so that's the one I'll link. I don't want to ever point people to pre-order or purchase something that I wouldn't recommend, and so I won't be putting a 4K link there. By all means, buy it if you want to, but I cannot recommend this one, and I'm really disappointed with what Universal's put out here. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed and like this video so others will see it and we spread the word here to maybe get something fixed. And also make sure you check out all my social media links down in the description for ways you can follow me, get in touch on social media, send me a message. Those are great ways to stay up to date on what's going on with the channel outside of YouTube. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and I will talk to you soon.